He's been ready for it this whole time.
Okay. All right, hot slaheo, we are official now. Before we move on with more of the content, I feel like we need to go over our intro to Lushootseed, because I feel like that will help us have a better understanding as we start going into the alphabet and as we start to build our knowledge of words and phrases. So this intro, the information that I took out of this slideshow is literally what you learn in 101 curriculum. So I kind of want to give you like the overview of what we're going to learn. So when we look at the Lushootseed language, to understand where the language was spoken, it was, where's my good map? I mean, it's not as good as I would like it to be, but it's well loved. So if we look at this map, Lushootseed was spoken as far north as Skagit, and it goes all along between the mountain range and the water. So all along down to Olympia, and then we have a couple of tribes, Squaxin, oh wait, no, I'm sorry, take that back, that's Nisqually. We have Squaxin and Suquamish. So this is the Lushootseed speaking territory. Over on the peninsula, you have a mix of Tulalip and Twana. And then up north, it goes into Straits language like Lamichasan. So this is our Lushootseed speaking territory.
Any crossover between the peninsula and Lushootseed?
There are similarities in the language. And you'll notice that when we attend gatherings where there's speakers from up north, we can understand each other. So we talked about like the territory. When we look at the speakers, the languages are related. So there are shared words, there are shared phrases. Sometimes the difference is like a vowel, so the way that they pronounce it. But they're connected. So this is, Lushootseed is a different language family, but all of those language families are connected. And then also recognizing that within these territories, people spoke multiple languages. So it was very common for people to understand the languages, whether it's within the same language family, understanding different dialects, or being able to speak Twana, Northern Lushootseed, Southern Lushootseed, Tulalip. Like people naturally, these were the languages that we spoke. At the time of the treaty, there were 40 plus tribes that spoke Lushootseed within our territory. And today we only list the remaining recognized tribes that speak Lushootseed. And if we were to look at each tribe, like the Snohomish had their own dialect. The Stillaguamish had their own dialect. And even within those separate dialects, there were differences from close to the saltwater versus upriver, upland. So yeah, at the time of the treaty, there were 40 plus. What we have today are the remaining tribes that we recognize today that continue to speak Lushootseed. The sound change, we used to use M's and N's, but then there was a sound change. It's not really clear like what exactly happened to create the significant sound change. But when we look at the way that words were documented in English, you can see that at that time of contact, we were using M's and N's. An example is today we say Snohomish, for Snohomish. 1895, we would have said Snohomish. So you can see where Snohomish came from that influence of using N's and M's. Just like for Swinomish, today we say swudubsh, swudubsh. And at the time of contact, we would have said swanumsh, swanumsh. And then whoever was interpreting that and trying to write it in English ended up with Swinomish. The names of our tribes were written down by government officials before the sound change happened. So when we start to look at the different tribal names, that's why you see N's and M's when they're written in English. But other language families still have their M's and N's. So they still utilize those. The mish ending, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, Skycomish, that mish ending, it's a suffix that means a group of people. So you notice that a lot of our tribes have that mish ending. It literally means a group of people. We add the suffix to the groups of people, so a lot of the tribes still have that. But some of them were actually dropped. So you'll notice like Nisqually, they don't have, even though they recognize themselves, they'll say Squaliabsh Chud. I am a Nisqually person. I'm from the Nisqually tribe. The way that it was written down and documented, they dropped off that mish ending when they wrote down Nisqually. And the same goes for Skagit. They'll recognize themselves Skagitabj. I am Skagit, but that was dropped off of the written form where it just is Skagit. And just like having a group of people, we also have a suffix that stands a little more generally for a group of living beings. And this can be attached to people, or it can be attached to animals. It could be attached to plants. It could be attached, one of my favorite ones to explain is guadbuh, our native blackberries. Everybody's familiar with that? The native blackberries, the little teeny tiny ones that are so scrumptious. Guad means low. Guad, just like in saying guadil, sit down. Guad is low. And buh is a group of living things. So we recognize those berries as being a group of living beings. So they're the ones that are down low. And then we have, when we talk about animals, tatachalbuh, large game animals, teachalbuh, smaller animals. And then it also was attached to groups of people. Snoqualmie would have been Snoqualbuh. So it has that buh ending. And then the reason why we say me, mu, and mer is it depends on who was documenting those words. They couldn't put that mu, they couldn't put letters together to create that sound. So it was documented in these different ways, me, mu, or mer. And that's how they would write it. To try to get as much of the word as possible. Sak buh, soyak buh, they also share the suffix. Yep, so in some of the documents, Snoqualmu, you'll see that mu when they were trying to do the mu. When we look at the language today, Lushootseed, what is left of Lushootseed has really been broken down into two different dialects. So at one time, 40 plus for each group of people, and not just each group of people, but the different dialects that they had from the top of the mountain down to the salt water. Now we have two. We have northern and southern. So the northern speaking tribes, anybody north of us. So we have Tulalip, which represents our Snohomish speaking. No, we don't want that. Another time. The Saxuado, Swinomish, Stillaguamish, and then down south, anybody south of us. Snoqualmie, Puyallup, Muckleshoot, Nisqually, Squaxin, Suquamish. For us, what was unique about our territory is we are right in between. So we are mostly a northern speaking tribe, but there are some things from southern Lushootseed that we've utilized instead of utilizing the northern version. The differences within the dialects. Tribes along each river system would speak their own version. For Skagit, they say spots for black bear, while we say a completely different word. We say shchutwud. So it could be a completely different word, or it could be the way that we pronounce words. And this was interesting because quite a few years ago, we had a couple of Swinomish tribal members that were working in our department. So we noticed the differences that we would pronounce things. The number 4, we say bos, and some of the other speakers would say boos. We would go back and forth. The way to say no is we say huet, and sometimes we would go back and forth with them because they would say huit. So it could be the pronunciation of the vowels, or it could be completely different words. But we all understand each other, whether it's the U or the O, and we try to do better about understanding completely different words. There's a bigger difference when we look at the changes between northern and southern. A lot of the basic words, up here we say shood, I see, or shudubitseed, cu, and they use lobbed. I ran into that when we would have, and it's been very few instances, but we're trying to increase our intertribal interactions. But I would like freeze up when I would run into a Lushootseed speaker from down south, and I would have to remember they just said lobbed, and that means shoed. So trying to make those connections and understand, you have to understand southern and northern if you want that communication. And another example is through counting, the way that we say certain numbers. Northern uses olob for 10. Down south they use parats. We use e to connect two nouns. They use yah to connect two nouns. So not only that, but our southern speaking relatives also had way more influence by English, which started affecting grammar, which is very unfortunate. So that pressure from English, if our people were in a territory where there was a high influence of English or French or other languages, then that pressure started to make changes within the language. And I believe Zeke Zalmai Zahir coins the term post-Lushootseed, so post-Lushootseed English and Duf-Lushootseed. So he says post-Lushootseed is when you have English influence on your Lushootseed speaking. So that could be grammatical changes where sometimes the elders, holding on to as much Lushootseed as they could, would have the English influence. So where we were just kind of introducing yesterday that were verb-based, then their verbs would come after who they were talking about. So grammatical shifts had an effect on the language. And then also, we did bring it up, we're learning this way. We're learning visual. We're learning book. We pick up the dictionary to try to figure out these words because we didn't have the blessing to be able to learn this as first speakers. So our shift in the language is because English was our first language. English is, to me, like so dull compared to how our ancestral language is. So we have that shift of the language where when we sat with an elder quite a few years ago, he asked us, how come you don't teach the language? I don't want to hear Lushootseed. I want you to teach Snohomish. And we were so confused because we're like, what we utilize, we make sure that it's the Snohomish dialect. We utilize audio. We utilize traditional stories that are from our ancestors from right here. And it took us a while to figure out that he is not hearing the Snohomish dialect because we are not first speakers. So as we learn, that's where we're fine-tuning ourselves, and we're trying to rebuild a fluency that mimics what our first language speakers were doing. In the beginning of our learning, sometimes we're sounding a little robotic because we're trying to get each and every sound down. But as we continue on in our journey, that's where we kind of speed things up and make shifts to how we speak. And then hearing other speakers, then we're tuning our ears to have the language in the forefront instead of English. When I was talking about the Snohomish dialect, so one of the examples, when they look at the words that had to be created, the thought of shoes, the difference of what our moccasins or our other shoes were like, and then being put in these things that are just tight on your feet. They called it log foot. So there's a lexical suffix for foot, shud or shod, and they use the root word for log, and that's how they created shoes. Like the word for shoes is, it feels like I have logs on my feet, like when I walk. This is not natural. Up north, we say quashite for stick or log. So up here, you would think that we would say quashlishid, which is the word quashite plus the suffix for foot. So you would think it would be quashlishid. But we adopted the southern word for log, which is stiquab, and we say stiquabshud. So in our territory, sometimes we picked up the words from down south as opposed to the words that would have been utilized in northern speaking territories. Just to show a little highlight on some of the tribal names and their meanings. So obviously that huge disclaimer for Tulalip, that's the name of where we're at. That's not the name of who we are. We are not the Tulalip people. We are the people of Tulalip. We are named after the bay. And for those familiar with the bay and with the sandbar, it was named Tulalip. And when you break it down, do is a directional prefix to or toward something. Lel means far, and op means bottom or base. So let's see what the tide is like today. I can't tell from here, those darn trees. So when the tide is low, you can see the sandbar. The tide's not always low. Sometimes we got high tide. Tulalip means far towards the bottom. You have to go far towards the bottom of the sandbar in order to land your canoes inside of the bay. So that's what Tulalip is named for. Tulalip is named for the bay, and having us all be placed on the reservation and the water source being the heart of how we travel and how we gather our foods, that's what the reservation was named after. Tulalip, far towards the bottom. And it pertains to the sandbar. If you do not know about the sandbar, that can be trouble. So that's why that area was named that, and that's what our ancestors picked up when creating the Tulalip tribes. Stillaguamish, it comes from the word stolak, which means river, and absh, which means people, group of people. We also notice that there can be a shift between letters based on whether a vowel is following it or a consonant. So stolaquabsh. At time of contact, it would have been pronounced stolaguamsh, which is where Stillaguamish, the English written form, came from. Our relatives up north, Swadubj, and just because I said up north, I'm going to bring this up. The root for their name comes from, let's see if I can do this. Comes from the word guad, just like we were talking about guadbu, down the group of people down at the ground. That also comes into play for the name for Snohomish. From the water source, they have their connections to the Skagit River and the Skagit people. We don't look traditionally at the land from a north, south, east, west. We don't even have translations for north, south, east, and west. I think we have a translation for north wind, north star, but we don't have directional terms like that. Our directional terms are upriver, downriver, up towards the mountains, out towards the salt water. So Swadubj means the group of people at the lower end of the river. And if you don't understand that, if you don't know that cultural component, people could misinterpret Swadubj as being like, oh, the lower people? Oh, they must be low class. Or, you know, they can make these different interpretations, but you have to understand that our relationship to the land is what determined a lot of our names for our different tribes. You can see why that map has been through a lot. Snoqualmie, Snoqualbuh. One of the interpretations for their name is that they're the transformation people. Sdok means to transform. Buh, the group of living beings. And at the time of contact, they would have pronounced it Snoqualmie. Nisqually, Duh, they have that same directional. Duh, to or towards. Squally, grass. Abj, group of people. At the time of contact, it would have been pronounced Nuhsqualiabj. And that's one of the groups where they dropped off that Abj ending. And then Buckleshoot. I spelled this wrong. I created this all too hawk a long time ago. The way that they pronounce it, or the way that they write it, where's my pen? Buckleshoot. But in their territory, the see everything people, they can see everything around them. They can see the territory from the space that they're at. Buckleshoot. So that's a little fun insight to some of our tribal names. And I wanted to go over that before we moved forward because I feel like it's helpful information to have a little bit of a background before we start moving in and I'm telling you guys, yeah, we can pronounce it this way or that way. Well, why? Well, these are some of the influences for how things ended up being pronounced based on whether it was a complete dialect, northern and southern, or different pronunciations within a territory. Any questions before we jump into technically day 2? Everybody good? Okay. All right. So let's go over our vowels. I'm going to keep drilling our vowels in our minds. E, A, O, U. Let's do that again. E, A, O, U. Does everybody have their sound chart from yesterday? Pop quiz. Do you have the sound chart? Yep, the sound charts. This is the one with the vowels. Thomas, I have one right here. We need WD-40 like really bad. Doors haven't been greased since Tulalip Elementary was built. No. So the reminder, that glottal stop, it doesn't make a sound. It's either a pause or an abrupt stop. So it's naturally at the beginning of words that start with a vowel. So we're going to start with the sound chart that has the glottal stop first. Top line, E, A, O, U. Second line, O. We could either O or U, but O, E, A, Ooh, hey. E, O, A, U, A, Thank you guys for staying on top of that because I get lost. E, O, A, U, A. All right. Moving on to the next one, the glottal stop after the vowel. We're not going to be able to draw that out. So starting with the top line, E, A, O, U. U, E, O, A, E, U, O, A, E, O, A, U, A. All right. And then our basic one, E, A, O, U. All right. We're gonna move into talking about the letter C. We have various C letters. The first C, when we see just a regular C, it's going to make a TS sound. If we were to look at an English word, the English word cats, that's the same sound that we're getting here. The next C letter that we have is one that has this little apostrophe on top. So this apostrophe, when we see this, we're going to force whatever sound this letter makes. So we have a regular C. This one, you're going to force that. It also reminds me of, like, if you were to have a glottal stop right after it. We call this glottalized C. Some people call it a hard C. For now, I'll call it glottalized C, because whenever we see that marking, they're going to be glottalized. It's going to force that sound out. And I think sometimes when they would write things down using English, so if anybody ever gets their hands on old documents, when you see something like this, if this makes the sound for this, they would do this to know that you're forcing it. So if you ever look at old documents, these are the types of things that you have to understand to try to figure out how to pronounce some of those words. The next C letter that we have, this right here, is called a wedge. So C wedge makes a CH sound. Ch, ch, ch. Okay. So the C wedge, ch. Then, believe it or not, there is a glottalized C wedge, which is going to force this sound. So we're just going to do that to remind ourselves that we're forcing that. So it changes it from ch to ch, 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 ts, ts, ch, ch, ch. Probably sounds really weird on the live because they don't hear you guys, but they hear me. All right. Combining the vowels that we have with these C letters, and using your whiteboards, I'm going to go through the first one together. We'll go over the first one together, and then I'll have a couple more for you guys to try. And we're just going to use consonants in the language that are the same in both English and Lushootseed. So the first word, if I were to ask you to write odd, which C are we starting out with? The bottom one. Glottalized C wedge, odd. Which vowel are we using? I feel like Vanna White now. A. Odd. And then what's the last letter? Odd. A. Okay, so there's our first word. This is an example of what we're going to try to do on the boards. The next word, so we just did odd. Odd. Now I want you to write down chod. Chod. If this one is odd, how would you write down chod? The regular C wedge. Yep. Next word, suburb. 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 Going through the letters. B. Suburb. Suburb. Just so you know, if I was saying a different word, I would be saying abub. But I'm saying suburb. Suburb. We're starting out with
Schwa.
B. B. Suburb. Suburb. Suburb.
What is a suburb?
B. B. Some of these are words, some of them are not.
Oh,
This
okay.
actually happens to be a word. This means berry pick.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Suburb. Suburb.
Suburb.
Suburb.
Suburb.
Okay. Next word. Abub. Abub. What are we doing to it?
A glottalized.
Okay. Abub. All right. So that is going through our C's, training our ears to hear it. Now, the important thing to know is that sometimes a simple change between a C wedge and a glottalized C wedge could mean a completely different word. And the word that the two things that I'm going to give you as an example for that. So that's why we try to train ourselves to make these different sounds. These two words look almost exactly the same, except for this apostrophe. So turning a regular Q into a glottalized Q, these are both words. This one is a word for squirrel. This is the word for hare. So the nice little example we give is if you try to say ushpadzab chud teed skadzo, but you say this. What'd you do this morning? Oh, I woke up early and I brushed my squirrel. Like, no. So that being able to train yourself to make those sounds, ushpadzab chud teed skadzo. So being able to make those different sounds. That's why we'll slowly go through these and we'll train ourselves to be able to know what sound each letter makes, train ourselves to say them, and train ourselves to hear them. It does make it difficult. I mean, we're day 3 and I'm asking you guys to listen to what I'm saying and try to write it down. But we're trying to stay super basic. We are staying in our lane. Okay, I'm going to pass out our first sound chart that we are going to go through. Wants to give you 3. All right, going through this sound chart, we're going to start out on the top row. And we'll do each one twice. Now let's add in some of the vowels. The second line we have
Am I doing that right?
yeah. Next E. And for the sake of keeping that same vowel, the one next to it could be C.
C.
C. E. C. Cha. Cha. So I actually want to write these down. I think it'd be better if we all so starting with the top line. E. E. And if we take away this mark, C. C. If it helps you out on your sound charts, feel free to write down things that'll kind of help you as we bring on new letters, that'll help you out. Because this one could be like C, C. And however you would like to write some of these sounds down, like people will take on different ways of doing it. CH. Maybe you do these all capital because you know you're going to force that sound out. TS. And maybe this one is like that too. So if you find ways that kind of help you when we go through these pronunciation practices, feel free to write things in there that might help you retain what those sounds make. Okay. And then the last sound on that one was cha. Cha. Next line, sa. Sa. O. 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 Sa. Sa. Anything on this one? Whoops. Look at, I was influenced by English. And instead of jumping all over the place, I want us to do this one. So to keep with our vowels, E, A, O, U. Now we're going to add the C wedge. Cha, cha, chi, che, cho, chu. Now we're going to glottalize that C wedge. E, A, O, U. Let's practice that with the regular C and the glottalized C. Okay, starting with the TS sound, the regular C. Sa, sa, si, say, so, su. Now we're going to force that TS sound. How come you guys didn't call me out?
But
I thought we was embarrassed.
Never embarrassed. Starting over. E, A, O, U. We also learned the glottal stop. So let's. So we're gonna do that abrupt stop. Sa, sa, si, say, so, su. Now we're gonna force that C. E, A, O, U. All right. You know what? We're gonna stop there. And what I can do is I'm going to reprint a sound chart to replace this one because this jumping all over the place with the vowels is not beneficial. So I'm going to do a sound chart that you guys can practice. And if I have your email, I'll email it to you so you can start practicing it tonight. But I want you guys to really get comfortable with the E, A, O, U instead of us picking it out of thin air, whether we're going to E or A. I think having it this way is going to really help you make a connection to the vowels and then make a connection when we're combining some of these new letters. So this is where we will stop for today because it's 12:52. My stomach growled. I know I need to try to eat, and I want to respect your guys' time. Otherwise, we'd be here for like another 20 minutes. So, does anybody have any questions or requests? If not, Uhojovchak, we are all done.
You know the ish? Ish. See, I must told me another meaning of ish.